Google Earth and Google Maps are popular satellite imagery programs used by many people worldwide. Since its release, people have been discovering amazing things, all captured by satellite imagery. Join me as we take a look at 15 incredible things seen from Google Earth. Number 15. China's Area 51. We all know Area 51, right? The place where they keep all the dead aliens and crashed alien spacecraft, and new technologies based on all the dead aliens and crashed alien spacecraft they've been keeping there over the years. Well, did you know that China has their very own version? And you can see it using Google Earth? No? Well, that's why we're here. To be fair, Nevada's Area 51 most likely has more to do with military aircraft or weapons testing than UFOs. Well, as far as we know. And an image taken in 2021 shows a strikingly similar facility being constructed on the edge of China's Lapnur weapons testing range. Before 2016, this part of the country was nothing more than empty land, but since then a large and ominous community of structures have been built. There are 12 large buildings, 3-mile-long runways, and there are reports of a top-secret space plane landing there in 2020, which ironically means it's probably not that top secret after all. According to experts, this location is perfect for testing high-altitude aircraft drones, no doubt designed for the sci-fi style wars of the future. And of course, it's very handy to keep those dead aliens in, from whatever China's version of Roswell might have been. Number 14. The Icebergs of the Antarctic. Alright, I know that you know what an iceberg looks like. It's one of those things that you drive your massive ship into while Celine Dion sings in the background. But seeing them from the vantage point of Google Earth is a completely different experience. Besides which, Antarctica is one of the most inhospitable places in the world, with 98% of it being covered by ice and surrounded by the Southern Ocean, which is one of the most difficult oceans to navigate in the world. So you're likely not to take a vacation there anytime soon. Stick to Google Earth. For example, back in March of 2021, a series of images were captured showing the after effects of an event which took place on the Brunt Ice Shelf, the first such event for 40 years. A huge crack formed, which released an iceberg known as A74, and it was mind-blowingly huge. How huge? Well, about 490 square miles, which is around 20 times larger than Manhattan. So yeah, it's pretty big. And you can watch this over the next few years as it works its way towards the Antarctic circumpolar current, where it should ultimately end up as a danger to shipping. A great way to spend several thousand hours on your computer. Number 13. Drought across the United States. This might seem like a bit of a morbid thing to go searching for on Google Earth, but don't worry, we're not suggesting you spend your free time looking at wildlife that's dying of thirst. It's more the geological side of things we're interested in here. Satellite images can help us see the effects of climate change on our planet, and the USA is no exception. Over the past few years, particularly in the western part of the country, there's been such prolonged hot weather along with reduced rainfall that farmers have lost major amounts of crops. Millions of fish had to be moved to coastal areas because the rivers had become too hot, and this has now been officially classed as a mega drought. Images taken by the European satellite Sentinel-2 allow us to compare images taken in the summer of 2020 to those taken in the summer of 2021 and see for ourselves just how serious this drought has become. For example, we can see that the capacities of Lake Mead and Lake Powell, two of the largest bodies of water in the area, have fallen to below 35%, which is a level not seen in generations. So is global warming real? Well, yeah, maybe. Number 12. Volcanic eruptions. Seems obvious, right? But who wouldn't want to see a volcanic eruption from the safety of your own home, and then zoom in so far that you could practically feel the sulfur burning away your nostril hairs? And there are plenty of these to choose from. There are around 1,500 active volcanoes on Earth right now. Fair enough, a lot of those are underwater, but there are still plenty churning and spewing out lava on land, and therefore plenty of eye candy for any lava lovers out there wanting to experience their natural fury and magnificence on Google Earth. This specific set of satellite images was taken on April 2021 above the Caribbean island of St. Vincent, when the La Soufriere volcano erupted, sending volcanic debris high into the atmosphere, with huge plumes of smoke billowing from its mouth. You can even see how far the ash spread itself, in this case as far as the surrounding islands. But these images aren't just handy for the likes of us, people who just enjoy watching natural disasters from the safety of their smartphone screens. Nope, these pictures will be vital in understanding how wide the impact of any future eruptions might be, and in making plans to provide assistance to residents affected near the slope of the volcano. You see, Google Earth isn't purely for entertainment or to help you find your way to an unfamiliar address. It can save lives too. Number 11. The Reshot Structure. The Reshot Structure might sound like something that belongs in the sculpture section of an art gallery, but it's actually a geological formation in the Sahara Desert that resembles an enormous bullseye, also known as the Blue Eye of the Sahara or the Gelbe Reshet. The formation stretches across a 40-kilometer-wide region of the desert in the nation of Mauritania, and although you probably wouldn't be able to take in its full majesty from the ground, it's when you get a bird's-eye view that you realize how incredible this natural feature truly is. The Reshot Structure is basically a dome of sedimentary rock brought into being due to several millennia's worth of erosion, with the inner eye composed of broken fragments of rocks and minerals, which gives it its striking ocular look. The inner eye itself has a diameter of around 19 miles, although the entire diameter of the Blue Eye of the Sahara is 25 miles, which means that it's easily seen from the air and has thus become a popular attraction for any airline passengers flying overhead, or airline crews for that matter, which it's also quite popular with. Well, I suppose as long as the pilot still has his eyes on the sky, then we can allow the cabin crew a couple of seconds of visual pleasure. Number 10. The Korean Peninsula at night. We're all pretty familiar with North Korea by this point, even if it's only because of a world leader acting like a toddler, stamping their feet, whining about whose nuclear arsenal is bigger. But even so, the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea is still one of the most secretive countries on Earth. With serious limits to the freedom of its residents, North Korea is not only a mystery to us outsiders, but the outside world is just as much of an enigma to those on the inside. There are restrictions in place regarding who's allowed to visit the country, and severe controls around any images or videos, not to mention their leadership. So how can we ever hope to satisfy our own curiosity? Easy. Google Earth. Or at least it would be that easy if it wasn't for one vital thing: the distinct lack of electric lights. We know that North Korea dedicates huge proportions of its wealth to its military and weapons programs, but the same can't be said for many other spheres of the country. Due to a decades-long lack of funding to national infrastructure, along with the inability to import fuel, North Korea by night looks like a black hole in the middle of its Asian neighbors. As you can see, there's a great deal of artificial light from Seoul, South Korea, and China, but North Korea is pretty much shrouded in complete darkness. There are a few twinkling lights from Pyongyang, where the leadership happens to be, but other than that, nothing. In fact, compared to South Korea, which consumes around 10,000 kilowatt hours of electricity each year, North Korea uses just 739. It really is a different world altogether. Number 9. The USA at night. In stark contrast to North Korea, however, the USA is lit up at night like something out of Blade Runner. Well, parts of it at least. With a size of approximately 3.8 million square miles, the United States is not only one of the largest countries in the world, but also has the third highest population, with around 330 million people. And a very, very large majority of those people are using electric lighting. Very possibly every single one of them. One thing to take into account, however, is that the population isn't spread evenly throughout the country. In fact, there are unfeasibly large parts of the country which have no inhabitants at all, as you can see from these incredible images from Google Earth. When you look at the USA at night, you can clearly see the more populated areas sticking out like a sore thumb, with the main areas such as New York, Washington, D.C., and California sending their artificial light shooting up into space, while some parts, particularly the western regions, are barely illuminated at all, giving these areas an eerie North Korea kind of quality. Mind you, you still get the feeling that in this day and age, even people living in the middle of one of those dark desert wastelands probably still have access to YouTube. Are we talking about you? Let me know in the comments down below. Number 8. Lithium production facilities. Now, this might seem like an unusual thing to search for while you're frittering away the hours on Google Earth. After all, when you've got the entire world at the click of a mouse, then why would you want to spend your time checking out the intricacies of a place that makes lithium batteries? Well, the answer to that is simple. Just look at this place. These days, the need to find alternatives to the internal combustion engine is greater than ever. But if people are going to move forward as a society and start investing in electric cars, then there needs to be a way to consistently power them, and responsibly too. And it's not just environmentally friendly vehicles that need lithium batteries to function. It's also smartphones and computers. So if you need another reason to check this place out on Google Earth, then how about this? You wouldn't be watching this video without it. This particular lithium production facility is located at one of the largest salt flats, the Sola de Atacama, where 29% of the world's supply of lithium is produced. And it seems appropriate to have a facility which produces things that are ultimately designed to help the Earth on a list of incredible things to see on Google Earth. Number 7. Burning Man. We've discussed a lot of amazing man-made structures on this list, along with some natural wonders, but let's move on to something we can all relate to: human beings. Thousands of them, gathered at one of the biggest festivals in the world. Burning Man is held every year in the Black Rock Desert in Nevada, with more than 80,000 visitors journeying there to take part in which, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you, concludes with the burning of a huge wooden effigy. So yeah, it's kind of like the Wicker Man, but with significantly less murder and hopefully without Nicolas Cage shouting the word bees over and over again. But even more importantly, you can see it from above. These images from Google Earth shows rows and rows of cars, camper vans, huge sculptures, and artworks, even a temporary airport for the wealthier visitors. Perhaps what stands out most of all, thanks to Google Earth, is the remoteness of the event. Tens of thousands of people gathered in the middle of nowhere just to celebrate music, fellowship, and nature, and clearly loving every minute of it. Maybe there's a lesson there for all of us, I guess. Number 6. The Amazon on fire. Yeah, sorry to bring everyone down after such a positive previous entry, but unfortunately this is the reality of things. Not many of our planet's rainforests remain in existence, and the Amazon accounts for more than 50% of the ones that do. Despite all the preservation efforts, however, the Amazon's 390 billion trees, from more than 16,000 different species, are still plundered on a regular basis, and this huge deforestation problem, believe it or not, can be seen from space, or Google Earth in our case, and they show just how extensive this horrific problem has become. And that's not the only problem. During the dry season, the fires start and consequently devastate massive sections of the rainforest. You could be forgiven for thinking that this is purely a natural occurrence due to global warming or something similar, as we've seen in other parts of the globe. But sadly, when it comes to the Amazon rainforest, the majority of these fires are started on purpose. You see, some of these trees are so old and so firmly rooted that they're impossible to cut down, hence the fire. And the ash-covered ground that remains is perfect for planting crops. And that's kind of ironic, isn't it? Deforestation to enable people to plant things. But whichever side of the debate you're on, there's no arguing with these devastating images of a once green and pleasant land. Number 5. Algal Blooms. Algal Blooms might sound like the name of an indie band from the mid-90s, but no, they actually live beneath the sea, where even the loudest guitar amplifier would have to fight to be heard. But while the deepest depths of the ocean are still far from being completely mapped out, and while there are no doubt things hiding at the bottom of the Mariana Trench that would haunt your nightmares forever, some of its more stunning and colorful creatures are much closer to the surface, so much so that we can see them from Google Earth, or at least the beautiful effect they create. You see, when conditions are right, huge blooms of phytoplankton can develop, which are plant-like organisms that use chlorophyll to produce energy from sunlight. With enough nutrition and favorable temperatures, colonies of phytoplankton can become very large indeed, and it's due to the currents of the sea and the way that the plankton flows that they create these stunning patterns. These particular images showing that incredible blue pattern were taken over the Falkland Islands, so if you want to experience it firsthand, then that's where you should be booking your plane ticket to. Number 4. Bleaching of the Great Barrier Reef. When we think of bleaching something, our minds generally turn to the appliances in our bathroom or possibly even our hair. But sadly, the same phrase can also be used to describe one of nature's most amazing wonders, the Great Barrier Reef. Due to rising ocean temperatures and pollution, marine life is undergoing one of the greatest threats in our planet's history. In fact, it's gotten so bad that some researchers are calling it the beginning of a modern extinction event. And one of the most worrying signs of all is something called coral bleaching. And okay, yeah, this is where things get really depressing. Coral bleaching basically describes the way coral reefs lose their color, and the reason they lose their color is because they're dying. Kind of like when E.T. lost his color and went really white and pale when he was on death's door. As coral reefs form one of the best environments for marine species, this is very bad news indeed. The images from Australia's Great Barrier Reef, the largest in the world, which has lost 30% of its total coral by 2016. And as you can see, the bleaching effect has been detected on the edge of the reef along its entirety. Within the next 2 decades, it's possible that there will be almost nothing left of the Great Barrier Reef, and the results of that could be catastrophic. Number 3. The Boneyard. Where do planes go after they die? Well, the Boneyard, of course, just like the rest of us. The Boneyard is the nickname for the 309 Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group facility in Tucson, Arizona. This is located on the 2,600-acre Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and it's home to more than 4,000 decommissioned aircraft. And it's believed that there are at least one of every model ever flown by the United States Air Force since World War II. And you can see why we've chosen it to put on our number 3 spot. Just look at the views of this place. There are all kinds of aircrafts here. Images clearly show B-52 bombers, F-14 fighter jets. If it has wings, guns, and a bomb bay, then you can bet it's here in this collection somewhere. Once these planes are considered obsolete, however, there's very little else the Air Force can do with them but leave them here to decay. That said, there's a good reason this location was chosen. Due to its altitude and dryness, the aircraft don't decompose as quickly, which means that it's also one of the best sources of spare parts on the planet. In other words, it's like one of those scrapyards where you can buy car parts for your old car, except a lot more difficult to gain access to. Number 2. The end of the dunes. I mean, it makes sense, right? Although deserts seem to go on forever, especially if you're viewing them from above, the dunes have to end somewhere. And why wouldn't they end suddenly? But even so, this one is truly an odd sight, making it look like the desert itself is just part of one big movie set. Amazingly, instead of the sand fading out, there are places where the border between the desert and surrounding landscape is surprisingly clear. It just happens. The desert finishes and water or civilization begins. These images in particular show the border between the part of the desert known as the Namib Sand Sea and the point where it meets the Kasab River. And as you can see, the desert clearly ends along the path of the river, with solid rocky ground on the other side. This is due to the fact that during the rainy season, the river floods, soaks either bank, washes away the sand, and therefore stops the desert from getting any bigger than it is right now. It's basically nature's equivalent of a bouncer at a nightclub, telling you that you can't come in because you're either wearing the wrong shoes or you're kind of a nerd. You've got no option but to stop or turn around and try another club instead. Number 1. Mars. Okay, so this might be pushing the definition of Google Earth to its very limit, but believe it or not, you can explore Mars via a bird's-eye view from your very own laptop. Due to the 8 robotic explorers now orbiting the red planet, each armed with a high-definition camera, we can now see incredibly detailed images of the planet as if we were steering those orbiters ourselves and explore a great deal of this inhospitable landscape. This process began with the Viking orbiters, which collected a series of incredible images, although recent probes with far more powerful cameras have been able to image it with the same resolution that we're used to on Earth, or Google Earth for that matter. I mean, how could we not have this at our number 1 spot? Just look at the outstanding views. Rocks, mountains, canyons, riverbeds, even dust storms have been captured encircling the entire planet. Despite the recent space adventures of multi-billionaires, it's going to be quite some time before we can book a cheap flight to Mars for a relaxing weekend break. So in the meantime, Google Earth is your very best option. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.